Chapter 1. A Clang Well Done. Some things start before other things. It was a summer shower, but didn't appear to know it, and it was pouring rain as fast as a winter storm. Miss Suspicia Tick sat in what little shelter a ragged hedge could give her and explored the universe. She didn't notice the rain, which just dried out quickly. The exploring of the universe was being done with a couple of twigs tied together with string, a stone with a hole in it, an egg, one of Miss Tick's stockings which also had a hole in it, a pin, a piece of paper, and a tiny stub of pencil. Unlike wizards, witches learned to make do with a little. The items had been tied and twisted together to make a device. It moved oddly when she prodded it. One of the sticks seemed to pass right through the egg, for example, and came out the other side without leaving a mark. "Yes," she said quietly, as rain poured off the rim of her hat. "There it is. A definite ripple in the walls of the world. Very worrying. There's probably another world making contact. That's never good. I ought to go there, but according to my left elbow, there's a witch there already." "She'll sort it out then," said a small and for now mysterious voice from somewhere near her feet. "No, it can't be right," said Miss Tick. "That's chalk country over that way. You can't grow a witch on chalk. The stuff is barely harder than clay. You need good hard rock to grow a witch, believe me." Miss Tick shook her head, sending raindrops flying. "But my elbows are generally very reliable." People say things like, "Listen to your heart," but witches learn to listen to other things too. It's amazing what your kidneys can tell you.
"Why talk about it? Let's go and see,"
said the voice.
"We're not doing very well around here, are we?"
That was true. The lowlands weren't good to witches. Miss Tick was making pennies by doing bits of medicine and misfortune-telling, and slept in barns most nights. She'd twice been thrown in ponds. Ordinary fortune-tellers tell you what you want to happen. Witches tell you what's going to happen, whether you want it or not. Strangely enough, witches tend to be more accurate but less popular.
"I can't barge in," she said. "Not on another witch's territory. That never, ever works. But—"
She paused.
"Witches don't just turn up out of nowhere. Let's have a look."
She pulled a cracked saucer out of her pocket and tipped into it the rainwater that had collected on her hat. Then she took a bottle of ink out of another pocket and poured in just enough to turn the water black. She cupped it in her hands to keep the raindrops out and listened to her eyes. Tiffany Aching was lying on her stomach by the river, tickling trout. She liked to hear them laugh. It came up in bubbles. A little way away, where the river bank became sort of a pebble beach, her brother Wentworth was messing around with a stick and almost certainly making himself sticky. Anything could make Wentworth sticky. Washed and dried and left in the middle of a clean floor for 5 minutes, Wentworth would be sticky. It didn't seem to come from anywhere. He just got sticky. But it was an easy child to mind, provided you stopped him eating frogs. It was a small part of Tiffany's brain that wasn't too certain about the name Tiffany. She was 9 years old and felt that Tiffany was going to be a hard name to live up to. Besides, she decided last week that she wanted to be a witch when she grew up, and she was certain Tiffany just wouldn't work. People would laugh. Another and larger part of Tiffany's brain was thinking about the word Cicerus. It was a word that not many people had thought about, ever. As her fingers rubbed the trout under its chin, she rolled the word around and round in her head.
Susurrus.
According to her grandmother's dictionary, it means a low, soft sound, as of whispering or muttering. Tiffany liked the taste of the word. It made her think of mysterious people in long cloaks whispering important secrets behind a door. Susurrus, 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 susurrus. She'd read the dictionary all the way through. No one told her you weren't supposed to. As she thought of this, she realized that the happy trout had swum away, but something else was in the water, only a few inches from her face. It was a round basket, not longer than half a coconut shell, coated with something to block up the holes and make it float. A little man, only 6 inches high, was standing up in it. He had a mass of untidy red hair, into which a few feathers, beads and bits of cloth had been woven. He had a red beard, which was pretty much as bad as the hair. The rest of him that wasn't covered with blue tattoos was covered with a tiny kilt, and he was waving a fist at her and shouting.
Gruvens, gang away ute här, you daft winne, where the greenheid?
And with that he pulled at a piece of string that was hanging over the side of his boat, and a second red-headed man surfaced, gulping air.
Nay, time for fishing. The greenheid is coming,
said the first man, hauling him aboard.
Grevens, let's be offski,
said the swimmer, water pouring off him. And with that he grabbed one very small oar, and with rapid back and forth movements made the basket speed away.
Excuse me, are you fairies?
Tiffany shouted. But there was no answer. The little round boat had disappeared in the reeds. Probably not, Tiffany decided. Then, to her dark delight, there was a susurrus. There was no wind, but the leaves on the alder bushes by the river bank began to shake and rustle. So did the reeds. They didn't bend, they just blurred. Everything blurred, as if something had picked up the world and was shaking it. The air fizzed. People whispered behind closed doors. The water began to bubble. Just under the bank, it wasn't very deep here. It would only have reached Tiffany's knees if she'd paddled, but it was suddenly darker and greener, and somehow much deeper. She took a couple of steps backwards, just before long skinny arms fountained out of the water and clawed madly at the bank where she had been. For a moment she saw a thin face with long sharp teeth, huge round eyes and dripping green hair like waterweed, and then the thing plunged back into the depths. By the time the water closed over it, Tiffany was already running along the bank to the little beach where Wentworth was making frog pies. She snatched up the child just as a stream of bubbles came around the curve in the bank. Once again the water boiled, the green-haired creature shot up, and the long arms clawed at the mud. Then it screamed and dropped back into the water.
I wanna go toilet,
screamed Wentworth. Tiffany ignored him. She was watching the river with a thoughtful expression. I'm not scared at all.
How strange. I ought to be scared, but I'm just angry.
I mean, I can feel the scared, like a red-hot ball, but the anger isn't letting it out.
Wanna go toilet,
Wentworth shrieked.
Go then,
said Tiffany absent-mindedly. The ripples were still sloshing against the bank. There was no point in telling anyone about this. Everybody would just say,
What an imagination the child has,
if they were feeling in a very good mood, or
don't tell stories,
if they weren't. She was still very angry. How dare a monster turn up in the river?
Especially one so ridiculous. Who did you think she was?
This is Tiffany, walking back home. Start with the boots. They are big and heavy boots, much repaired by her father, and they belonged to her various sisters before her. She wore several pairs of socks to keep them on. They were big. Tiffany sometimes feels she's nothing more than a way of moving boots around. Then there is the dress. It has been owned by many sisters before her, and it has been taken up, taken out, taken down, and taken in by her mother so many times that it really ought to have been taken away. But Tiffany rather liked it. It comes down to her ankles, and whatever color it had been to start with, is now a milky blue, which is incidentally exactly the same color as the butterflies skittering beside the path. Then there is Tiffany's face, light pink with brown eyes and brown hair. Nothing special. Her head might strike anyone watching, in a saucer of black water, for example, as being just slightly too big for the rest of her, but perhaps she'd grow into it. And then go further up, and further, until the track becomes a ribbon, and Tiffany and her brother 2 little dots, and there is her country. They call it the chalk. Green downlands roll under the hot midsummer sun. From up here, the flock of sheep moving slowly drift over the short turf like clouds on a green sky. Here and there sheepdogs speed over the turf like comets. And then, as the eyes pull back, it is a long green mound, lying like a green whale on the world, surrounded by the inky rainwater in the saucer. Miss Tic looked up. She said,
That little creature in the boat was a Nac-Mac-Feegle, the most feared of all the fairy races. Even trolls run away from the WeeFreeMen. And one of them warned her.
She is the witch, then,
said a voice.
At her age, impossible. There has been no one to teach her. There is no witch on the chalk. It's too soft. And yet, she wasn't scared,
said Miss Tic.
This child needs watching. But chalk is too soft to grow a witch on.